Donc, d'abord et avant tout, merci beaucoup de m'avoir invité. C'est un grand honneur. C'était à Glendon que j'ai rencontré ma femme qui est avec moi aujourd'hui, avec nos 2 enfants. Nos 2 filles sont là. Et c'est à Glendon que j'ai commencé ma carrière en tant qu'intellectuel et que prof d'histoire, finalement. It was Julie Drexler who hired me first in the Frost Library. I can't see you, Julie, from the bright lights. There you are. And who started me on this wonky path. And I said to her on the lunch break, I blame Julie and my mother for everything that's wrong in my life. In all honesty. You're welcome, Julie. I had a great formation in Glendon. But I want to talk to you today not about smoke and fire, actually, but about water. And more generally, I'm going to put a little twist on this. I want to talk about the uncertain future of the liberal arts and why Canada needs not just Glendon, but Glendons. We need more Glendon, not less Glendon. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, so this is a friendly audience, but it's an important message, and it's one I actually trot out to a variety of audiences. But first, back to me, my favorite topic of conversation. Like Greg this morning, I was... Well, I'm an Anglophone Montrealer originally. I was trained by Jesuits at a private boys' school in Montreal, a good traditional 16th century humanist education with lots of Latin, which set me on my course to be a medievalist. I came to Ontario in 1989 and to Glendon in 91, as you just heard. From here, I met a wonderful medievalist, André Courtemanche, who was here just for a few years, and she exposed me to Provence and these wonderful notarial registers, talking about stories of sex and violence and ordinary people's lives in the 14th century. It was a subject that I became passionate about. I went to U of T for my master's, to ICAM for my PhD, and then back to Toronto to the Centre for Medieval Studies as a postdoctoral fellow. After that, I actually taught at York University alongside Don Pilgrim and Bill Irvine, who had introduced me to my wife many years earlier, and at St. Michael's College School at Bathurst at St. Clair before I landed my tenure-track job at St. Jerome's University and the University of Waterloo. And so I came to liberal arts education in my teaching career, having been the product of it myself, and I was incredibly optimistic and excited about contributing to that discourse. And it was very soon after arriving in Waterloo that I began to be disabused of my optimism. And I took stock and realized that the liberal arts was in fact in crisis in our country. And we've seen that play out over the last 11 years since I started my full-time career at Waterloo. In the history department, 5-6 years ago, we had 350 honors history majors. That number this year is down to about 58 or 68. We can't get students to take history, English, philosophy, literature, languages, and this is a trend we see across Canada. It's not just at Waterloo, the big STEM university. It's pretty indicative across the board. And I think the reason that's happened is that the liberal arts have ceded the role of disruptor. This was traditionally our role. We were meant to upset society and to challenge preconceptions and to force innovation. We've ceded the role of disruptor lamentably, I would say, to industry and to the pursuit of capital. And that is the world that we live in largely. However, I offer a hopeful message now. And that's where we get to climate change and environment. On a sabbatical about 6 years ago, my family and I had the pleasure of living at Hertsmontceau Castle. Many of you know it. It's the international campus of Queen's University. It's located in Sussex, actually, so in the south of England. It's a wonderful site, a magnificent site on 600 acres of beautiful farmland. And it's been continuously inhabited since the Neolithic. We have done a lot of archaeological excavations, my team and I, to look at the medieval settlement. But in doing that, we often come across Bronze Age and Roman stuff and all sorts of older remnants as well. To do my work, I was very fortunate. I received about $500,000 in seed funding from the federal government through the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada. And in order to get that money, I said to them, well, I'd like to get medievalists thinking about what the world was like around the time that this beautiful castle was built. And the castle was built in the early half of the 15th century, so around 1440. This was a time when the planet's temperatures were dropping just by about 1 degree per annum, nothing that you would notice if you'd been alive at that time. And there was increased precipitation and greater storms in the North Atlantic. The result was coastal erosion, rampant land loss. In particular, arable farmland was lost. Tens of thousands of arable farmland acres were lost just in the south of England alone in a few decades. Displaced people, disruptions of the food supply chain, and massive economic consequences. So does this sound familiar to you today? It should. So it's no wonder that the Shirk people said, oh, maybe there is something relevant in the Middle Ages after all. And so I began sending teams of students from Ontario over to the south of England We send them for between 6 and 12 weeks. We train them in archaeology. We train them in archives, and we literally get them digging up the past. They also chase records all over the rest of the world. They've had to track things down in Boston and in other parts of Canada and in the UK. And they try and help us understand not just the impact of climate change, because we actually have very good environmental scientists that can help us do modeling and this sort of thing, and we have good proxy data to show us what the change to the planet was, but what we're interested in as humanists is the impact of climate change on the lived human experience, and this is something that is missing globally right now. When my students come back, they're hungry to do more of this, and so we've built a lab, and this was something totally unique in the discipline of history. Right across Canada, there are not very many labs, but I looked at the science model, which has gained, as I said, the greater currency in our culture today. And I said the way historians work is not sustainable. We need to start imitating our colleagues in the pure sciences. So we need laboratories. We need to be working in collaborative research teams. We need professors working with postdocs, PhDs, MAs, and crucially, early learners, young undergraduates. And so you will have a system of peer mentoring that goes up and goes down, all of us working in these teams that report into a single lab director. And at Waterloo, this is how I've structured my research project now. So we've sent about 50 students over the last few years. They come back, they become lab interns. They co-author articles with me. They apply for grants with me. These 18, 19, 20-year-olds, these millennials that we're so quick to write off, are actually hungry for this type of interaction. We give them a stable work environment. They get access to a research budget, a fob that lets them into the lab after hours and on weekends. And lo and behold, they come. They work on Saturdays. They work on Sundays. They stay there late. They produce fantastic digital objects, 3D images, recreations of lost landscapes, maps that show change over time, and most recently an interactive video game where you can walk through the landscape of medieval Herz-Monceau as the climate change is happening and interact with historical avatars who are based on records that we found in the archives. And we're going to provide this game to grade 4 students in Ontario to change the way that the history curriculum at an even younger level is taught. And all of this is done largely through the time and talents of 19, 20, 21-year-olds under the supervision of more advanced scholars. I think that this type of approach, modeling history teaching on a team-based, collaborative, inquiry-based system that you see in the sciences, is the future of arts education. And colleges like Glendon, because they're small, because they're nimble, because they have good student-teacher ratios, are uniquely positioned to revive the humanities and the liberal arts to provide this model to Canada and to the world. When the students leave my lab upon graduation, if they go to grad school or when they finish grad school, I am not at all concerned if they're going to continue the study of history or if they're going to become environmentalists. The skills that they've acquired are transferable skills, the critical thinking, the research methodologies, the collaboration. This is what the humanities provide to the world, the ability to stand up in front of a group and make a case persuasively. I have the Dean of Engineering now coming to us and saying, can we partner? Because when our engineer grads go out into the world, the big complaint we hear is that they can't talk to human beings. And I say, yeah, we'll teach them how to talk, but also we're going to get them thinking not just how to build coffee makers, but what is the problem of coffee on the planet today? How does it exploit vulnerable populations? What's the impact on the rainforest? What's the link to climate change, right? What is the capitalist implication of the coffee industry, right? We'd like engineers to actually have a social conscience and to be thinking in these social justice terms while they communicate their ideas. So by all means, let's put blended teams of engineers and history students together and let's see what fantastic things we can come up with then. And I really do think that that is the way that everything has to go in the future. So in a nutshell, that is, I think, where Glendon can really provide revitalized leadership in the teaching of the arts. It's something that Glendon has a long history of doing. In my last minute, I will tell you one anecdote, which I tell to my first-year undergraduate classes to reinforce problems of culture and climate and human technologies. You know, we're very driven by our newest gadgets, and these are fantastic, but if we don't think about what they do in the world, we get into trouble chasing the technology. How many people have been to England or Ireland? Raise your hands. Let me see. All right. You know those beautiful rolling green hills that you see? Okay. In the early Middle Ages, people were saving books the way that the Romans had. You all know what a Roman book looked like? It was a scroll, right? And it would get rolled up. It wasn't very durable. All of these Christian monks wanted to study the Bible. So imagine you have a big scroll and you want to see what's at the beginning of the Bible. You look and you want to compare it to what's at the end of the Bible, and you do this. Oh, there it is. And then you have to go back to the beginning and you do this. Medieval monks figured out that the scroll was not an efficient way of storing information. So they developed the bound codex, the book that we use today. And in the book, you can flip back and forth very quickly. It's a simple but important technological leap for human information retrieval, the creation of the book. The books are written on what? Just shout it out. You know what medieval people wrote on. What did they write on? Parchment or vellum. So this is an animal skin. Imagine, over 1,000 years, you have millions of Bibles being copied. They are being copied on sheepskin. How many sheep does it take to make a single Bible? Does anyone know? 300 for a medium-sized Bible. So can you imagine the sheep population over 1,000 years in England and Ireland? It's massive. The topography of England and Ireland in the first century was very craggy and bumpy. Sheep are what we call aggressive grazers. When they nibble, they don't just nibble the tip of the blade of grass, they take a big mouthful and they erode the soil. And over 1,000 years, you end up with a beautiful landscape that's transformed because of the book industry. There are a million examples we can play like this to show ordinary people how our technologies have always changed our natural environment, in that case maybe for the better, but if you think of other aspects, definitely not. We need humanists to tell these stories to get the world to understand why our technology has to be problematized. And that's where I think Glendon can really lead the way. Thank you very much.